Hello, good afternoon. My name is Zuzana Wojciszkova and I am a moderator of the third part of our conference. And this block is aimed to visions for 21st century. So I am looking forward for your new ideas and lots of visions. But we start with short presentations of our guests, and first is Mr. John Bell from the USA, will come here in Prague. Mr. John Bell, you know him, I suppose, is performer, playwright, director, producer, teacher, theater historian, puppeteer, member of UNIMA. Do I forget something?
I think you went over the top.
So
Thank you.
You can start.
Thank you very much, Susanna. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually, I think, representing Nancy Staub, our friend Nancy Staub, longtime member of UNIMA, wrote me after she had an invitation to be here. And she lives in New Orleans now, and she doesn't like to travel very far. My wife Trudy and I saw her last November, and she's like, I don't go very far from New Orleans. So she asked me to come here and thank this organization, thankfully, graciously let me come. So I've been very inspired by all of the presentations so far with their great scholarship and historical insights into the nature of UNIMA. And we were asked to talk about the development of UNIMA in the previous decades and its visions for the 21st century, about which I feel like I know little or nothing. So I wanted to sort of approach this from my own perspective and think particularly of the United States experience with UNIMA. And I like this photograph of the sculpture here in Prague because thinking of what we've been talking about already, it's sort of inherently international. You know, it's the or European in any event. But by definition, this image of UNIMA includes puppet characters from across Eastern and Western Europe. And I think that innate internationalism is something that, as I hope to kind of infer in what I talk about, has simply expanded and maybe continues to expand. So I wanted to think about the development of UNIMA in the past few decades and its possibilities for the 21st century, and I'm pleased to do so here in Prague, which is a place so central for puppetry. For me, the city of the Golem and Kafka, as Michael Meshka mentioned, Peter Bogatyrev, Roman Jakobson, Yuri Veltrushky, and Jindřich Honzel from the Prague Linguistic School, I'm sure I'm pronouncing the names wrong, Josef Svoboda and Jan Svankmajer, just people I know of myself, young Hanus Haschenberg, who made puppet shows in Terezin concentration camp, may his memory be for a blessing, Arka Theater, our friends there, Peter Nickel Drak Theater, and our friends Vera Rikarova and František Vítek. This Prague in particular is so central to modern puppetry that I am astonished I have not been here many times. This is the first time I'm here. The fact that UNIMA was founded here in 1929 is not surprising. That UNIMA has gone on to become the oldest international arts organization in the world, I think, is surprising, but also not surprising given the fact that puppetry skims along the edges and underneath culture and politics. Although UNIMA utterly engaged in the tricky complications of international relations and culture and the psychological peculiarity of those drawn to puppetry, us, has not been immune to political challenges within the organization, it has been able to establish itself as an astoundingly open means of communication among different cultures. This was notably important and apparent during the Cold War, when UNIMA managed, probably with great difficulty, I'm sort of reiterating what was said more eloquently and more detail up to now, probably with great difficulty to bridge the huge gap between capitalist and socialist countries with the idea that puppetry was utterly capable of connecting these disparate worlds. The fact that UNIMA was, during the 1950s and 60s, simply continuing its pre-war practice of linking Western puppeteers from across Europe added a notable depth of historical tradition to these efforts to go beyond Cold War dichotomies. And from the outside, perhaps it looked simple. Why shouldn't the makers of children's entertainment be able to transcend 20th century politics? But puppeteers knew, I think, that the alternate communication channel of UNIMA was a priceless means of stepping outside Cold War ideologies, although we know from what was just said that they weren't really able to always step outside. My sense of United States involvement with UNIMA is that it emerged from the desire of Jim Henson and Nancy Staub and Alelu Curtin to make connections to European puppetry that to them seemed so utterly reasonable and necessary. And I wanted to step back and to think about what was said already. Eddie Maharon was talking about the 1929 UNIMA Congress that Barbara Takanik was a part of. And I know that in 1930, an American puppeteer named Meyer Levin went to the Liège Congress and wrote about it very excitedly and eloquently back in the States. Before then, American puppeteers routinely went to Europe to be inspired, so that Ellen van Valkenburg and Maurice Brown from the Chicago Little Theater, who did the first artistic puppet theater in the United States beginning in 1910. They were inspired by Edward Gordon Craig, as so many avant-garde Americans were, and like many avant-garde artists, they went over to Europe, to France, to meet with Craig, who sometimes met with him and sometimes didn't. But they went to the fountain of European puppetry and came back, and in the case of Valkenburg and Brown, started the first artistic puppet theater in the United States. Also, I think later on in the 1950s, Marjorie Batchelder, who was another chronicler of puppetry, and together with Paul McFarlane created the first American Puppet Festival in 1936 in Detroit. She went to Europe, and especially to Eastern Europe, where she was inspired by the puppetry of socialist countries, and then also went to India at a time when she wrote that she was not so interested in American puppetry. It was not very interesting to her. So there's been this idea that Americans can learn a lot from European puppetry. So I forget what these images are. Okay. So puppeteers in the US, despite obvious roots in European puppet traditions, are, like the rest of their fellow Americans, notoriously uninterested in and to a large extent ignorant of the global roots of puppetry. I say that with fondness. Jim Henson, Nancy Staub, and Alelu Curtin's efforts to make US puppetry more international through the creation of UNIMA USA, which Karen and I were thinking, I think it was in 1965, but I'm not sure. I'm sorry, my scholarship is shoddy. The creation of UNIMA USA was a not so subtle effort to urge their fellow US puppeteers to look beyond North America. The UNIMA USA, after its creation, was relatively soon adopted by the Center for Puppetry Arts in Atlanta, Georgia, and Vincent Anthony, the director of that center. And that's largely the permanent home of UNIMA USA. Vince has sort of, who's played a role in UNIMA in general, has looked after what for us, as is the case in England, is an amateur organization, and taken charge of keeping its records and stuff like that. While UNIMA's pan-European approach to culture was remarkable for the early 20th century, its continuing efforts to connect puppet practices around the world have only increased. The development of regular festivals, the creation of new publications, the creation of the various UNIMA commissions and school, library, and research resources in Charleville have all helped establish the strength of puppetry as a cultural force with a global history and future. And I wanted to add as a footnote that I don't think it's an UNIMA publication per se, but the French journal Pouc was the inspiration for our UNIMA USA journal, Puppetry International. So when we were looking at that, and Nancy and Alelu were talking with Andrew Periali and myself to make this new publication, Puppetry International, the model we looked at was Pouc. So, in particular, UNIMA's stated interest in peace and mutual understanding between people, regardless of origin, political, or religious convictions of cultural differences, as UNIMA's mission statement says, has helped guide it into a role as a supporter of human rights, work that is deepened by its later connections to UNESCO. In my 20s and 30s, when I was a member of Bread and Puppet Theater, UNIMA stood out as a gateway into the world of global puppetry. It reaffirmed what I had learned from our German director, Peter Schumann, that puppetry is a rich, inventive, and innovative means of making serious art and performance about the way we live. The 1980 UNIMA Congress in Washington, D.C., organized by Nancy Staub, was central to a growing understanding among American puppeteers that innovations in U.S. puppetry were part of a larger, deeper, and older history of puppet performance around the world. In a way, the Congress was a humbling experience for us as egotistical Americans, but it helped broaden our understanding of what we were doing. I remember when my friend and fellow Bread and Puppet veteran Massimo Schuster was the president of UNIMA in the early 2000s, and hearing from him about the project to create the World Encyclopedia of Puppetry Arts, and the strong idea he had that this resource should be online. Although the challenges of creating the encyclopedia were considerable, publishing it first in French and then through the efforts of Karen Smith and many others, putting it online in English and Spanish as well, the World Encyclopedia of Puppetry Arts has become an important or essential example of global cultural exchange in the digital age. Multi-sourced, flexible, thoughtful, and complete, it shows how digital culture might attempt to create an objective resource open to at least those who can get online. The naming of two non-European UNIMA leaders in 2008, Dadi Pudumji as president and Jacques Trudeau from Quebec as general secretary, marked an important shift away from Eurocentrism, despite the fact that UNIMA remains an essentially European project of enlightenment and modernist cultural optimism, or maybe utopianism. The citing of the 2012, do that. Oh, okay. Okay, I have to digress. So this is an example of one of the UNIMA Commission event, the Research Commission event that happened in my university, University of Connecticut, in 2011, when in part of a conference that we presented there, the UNIMA Research Commission worked with us and had events that coincided with that. And the presence of Pupak Ardalan from Iran, I think, is an interesting example of the internationalism of such events. The sighting of the 2012 UNIMA Congress in Chengdu, China, was a further example of this growing sense of a mission to truly be global. And this is Nancy Staub. I think she was in charge of the workshops maybe there, or in Chengdu in 2012. And for us in the US delegation to Chengdu, this was quite unusual for us because at that time, Manuel Moran, originally from Puerto Rico, was the head of, our UNIMA USA group. And of course, we met with delegates from Cuba and China. And for the US connection with Cuba is like incredibly fraught. Like right now, our president wants to make things even worse with Cuba and to prevent, even the meager connections that we have. But so I think this example of the US including Puerto Rico, who Trump also has a vendetta against, Puerto Rico and our brothers and sisters in Cuba and in China, not to mention Australia here, but was really important. That's that. The 2014 UNIMA Council meeting in Varadero, Cuba, was also an aspect of this sense to be truly global. In the Western Hemisphere, where I'm from, the creation of the UNIMA Americas Commission, largely as a result of Manuel Moran's work, connecting North America, Central America, and South America, and considering that as a unified cultural unit, which is really unusual in terms of United States thinking. To think about Latin America is a big struggle with mainstream American culture, but Manuel has done that. The UNIMA Americas Commission marks an important shift in thinking, a valorization of Latin American performance culture, and a sense for the US that regional thinking about puppetry needs to broaden its borders. Is that the last? Yeah. So I think the challenge, part of the challenge that we face with UNIMA USA is, maybe there's two challenges. One is to convince our fellow American puppeteers that it's worthwhile to have an international perspective, which is not obvious immediately and obviously apparent to many of my beloved American puppeteers. And secondly, as I think Karen Smith just said to me, that we have a challenge to engage a younger generation of American puppeteers to connect with UNIMA and as well as the Puppeteers of America, which is our national puppet organization. So in terms of the future, I know exactly what's going to happen. No, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I feel that the foundation of UNIMA and its very tricky but persistent embrace of international puppetry and its increasingly expansive range from Europe to including the Americas and now to Asia and Africa and other places. I think that persistence in developing an international perspective is a good sign for this particular moment when as I was mentioning earlier, in Europe and in the United States and maybe other places as well, there are forces of nationalism and a lack of interest in international cooperation that are stronger. So I feel guardedly optimistic about that. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for your contributions. And now the second guest of our panel is Mr. Kida Takaki. He is representative for Japan, UNIMA Japan. So it's your turn.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Takaki Kida, Director of UNIMA Japan. I am the Secretary of the Puppet Center in Ida City. I am very glad to be here. In Japan, as you know, bunraku has a rare three puppeteer style. In recent years, the style is adopted in various places internationally. On the other hand, Japanese are good at incorporating foreign things, and there are different styles of puppet show in Japan also. There is a history that Japanese modern puppet show has evolved into a variety under influences mostly from Europe. Traditional and modern puppeteers in Japan exist together in harmony. Currently, the number of members of UNIMA Japan is 259. How have Japan influenced and contributed to the 90 years of UNIMA? One of the most significant issues is our festival. Excuse me. I'd like to talk about the festivals in Japan. UNIMA was established in 1929, and at the third UNIMA Congress in 1930, the Japanese economist Tsunao Miyajima had already introduced the bunraku in French. Since the 1930s, international exchange had begun. The Japanese puppeteers officially joined UNIMA in the 1958 Bucharest Conference. At the time, the puppet theater Puk joined UNIMA. At the World Youth Student Peace Friendship Festival held in Moscow in December 1957, a representative of the puppet theater Puk at the time, Taiji Kawajiri, met Margareta Nicolescu in Bulgaria. It is said that this was the first direct contact of Japanese and overseas puppeteers. The first puppet festival in Japan was held in Asahikawa in 1959. It is said Hokkaido Puppet Festival. Since then, the puppet festival has spread throughout Japan. There was an epoch in the Hokkaido Puppet Festival. It held a national puppeteers from, It held a national festival at the 10th anniversary in 1968. The committee invited 3 puppeteers from Okinawa before Okinawa was returned to Japan in 1972. The puppetry exceeded the wall of politics and realized a true national gathering. In 1979, the year of International Children's Year, in commemoration of 50th anniversary of UNIMA, UNIMA Japan hosted the Asia Pacific International Puppet Festival in Tokyo. It was the first international festival in Japan to bring together puppet shows from overseas. Delegates from 20 countries participated in the conference, and puppeteers from 10 countries joined in performances. There was another epoch in Japan. In 1988, 15th UNIMA Congress was held in Japan for the first time in Asia. The theme was the first meeting in Asia of the puppeteers from all over the world. The registered participants were over 500 from 36 countries and over 1,000 from Japan. There was a general meeting and festival in Nagoya, and the festivals were held in Ida City and Tokyo also. At that time, the festival in Ida celebrated its 10th anniversary and held the World Puppet Festival. At the same time, they built a puppet theater in the city. In addition, the Ida city concluded a friendly city agreement with the city of Charleville-Mézières. It was a chance for Ida city to be recognized by foreign countries as well as within Japan as a town of puppets. The Ida Puppet Festa is now the biggest puppet festival in Japan. It is held every summer and has more than 400 performances of professionals and amateurs in 6 days. Many countries from overseas are also participating. Please come to Ida if you are interested. We will be happy to give you our hospitality. There still remains a lot of influences from 1988. In 1989, the puppet theater Himawari Hall was founded in Nagoya. Japan was in bubble economy period at that time. More puppeteers started their puppet companies in their hometown, independent of the large puppet countries. After the collapse of the bubble in 1990s, the economy slowed down significantly. The budget of government is decreasing steadily. The theater performance activities for the infants and the elementary schools shrunk fast. In addition, the number of children decreased because of the declining birth rate, and the change influenced the show productions. Many shows are performed by 5 or 6 puppeteers in the past. Now, most of the shows consist of 2 puppeteers or so due to the budget. After the Great East Japan earthquake in 2011, the value standards changed even more. Puppeteers became more conscious of the reason why they were doing puppets. Immediately after the earthquake, puppet shows were no longer useful. First of all, what was necessary to live? Support supplies, including food and volunteer activities, were indispensable. On the other hand, when people's lives began to recover to some degree, they could not do nothing art and culture to have a hope to live. Puppet theater played a role well, and performances in the stricken area continue until today. Some of the trends intoxicated with the Olympic Games in 2020 are observed, but the recovery is not yet finished. In Japan, people overemphasize economy supremacy, and within modern digital society of speed, less young people find hope in future. The role of puppet theater in future is never small. The power of analog is the basis of the natural world, and one of the most advanced styles is the puppet play. Its affinity with animism that Japanese prefer is excellent. My son is now 6 years old. He has already seen more than over 100 puppet shows from Japan and abroad. And he lives between reality and fantasy. His dream is to become a Superman and save the world. I believe he will save the puppetry world too. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, and cross fingers to your son. From Slovakia came Ida Hledíková. She is representative for Theatre Faculty of the Academy of Performing Arts in Bratislava. She is head of puppet department and member of UNIMA. Ida, it's your turn.
Thank you, Susanna. Thank you very much for inviting me here. It is always honor to work for UNIMA and being amongst people of UNIMA. And I am happy to be in Prague. I am happy to be with my former professor Nina Malikova, who also introduced UNIMA to me and me to UNIMA. So thank you, Nina, from this place. So my contribution is mainly personal because I have been associated with UNIMA for a few decades. From my beginnings as a researcher, theatrologist, a graduate in puppetry and a puppetry department at the Academy of Performing Arts in Prague, I first came into contact with UNIMA during the visit of its senior representatives. To mark this special occasion, we performed the scene from Faust, a marionette play, at our school in Prague between 1978 and 1982. My second meeting with the UNIMA senior officials took place in India, where I was sent under the bilateral agreement between the Ministries of Culture of Slovak Republic and India. The meeting of the UNIMA Executive Committee was held there at the same time. In the 1980s, I didn't expect that I would ever work with these valuable people and become a member of the Executive Committee for a relatively long period. I have witnessed positive transformations of UNIMA since Jacques Félix, followed by Miguel Areche, and then by Jacques Trudeau, were its secretaries. They all were strong personalities, and each of them significantly contributed to the development of puppetry, its organization, and democracy. These famous figures transport UNIMA hand in hand with its presidents Margareta Niculescu, Massimo Schuster, and the current president Dadi Padamji. Many marked changes in that period testify to a continuous, regenerating dynamic process of transformation of UNIMA and its effort to keep pace with the times. As a researcher, theatrologist, I was honored to work under the UNIMA Commission's presidents. I had an opportunity to work for the Publications and Communication Commission, chaired by Penny Francis, with whom I had a chance to cooperate in writing and publishing the UNIMA Bulletin when the East-West relations improved. Penny is one of the few who wrote about the puppets in the puppetry in the Central Europe. We really appreciate it because even after the fall of the Iron Curtain, I feel a lack of communication between West and Central European countries, including the UNIMA elites. It shows not very much interest in Central and East European puppet theatre, except their visits to the same frequented places. Central and Eastern Europe lose competitions to organize UNIMA congresses. My impression of a lack of interest in the events in the countries behind the former Iron Curtain hurts me. For example, the low, almost zero level participation of theatres in Charleville-Mézières World Festival, or the interest of UNIMA in the international activities of excellent puppetry schools, for example, the largest and, according to my meaning, the most important school festival, which is held in Białystok, Poland. There are platforms with reserves. Then, coming with my memories, I remember and am thankful for cooperation also with presidents of Research Commission Eddie Mayaron and John McCormick. We cooperated on project Directory of Puppetry Researchers, which still continues, and it is important material. From my perspective, I view UNIMA as an organization that opens the door to different parts of the world, and provides the opportunity of getting to know each other and cooperate. These are the major achievements of UNIMA. Where are UNIMA's reserves and what are its prospects? UNIMA was founded and has existed as an international organization of professional and amateur puppeteers. What importance does it have for an ordinary puppet maker, puppeteer, director, stage designer, or amateur puppeteer? What can it bring or how can it enrich a puppeteer? Why do young people in our countries need it less today than ever before? Why are only a few faithful and dedicated people interested in the National Congress in Central and Eastern European countries? Is it still the result of socialism or the fast pace of the consumer world driving us forward and we have no time to stop? In my experience, I can say that UNIMA is accepted and needed differently in different corners of the world. My view is, of course, subjective, as I live in Central Europe and remember its effectiveness in the time of socialism and now, after the social and political changes in Eastern Europe. UNIMA's position in socialism was a matter of elites. Professionally recognized and active personalities had the opportunity to work in UNIMA's international structures as a result of their activities and expertise. Under socialism, UNIMA was an important link between the closed world of puppetry in the so-called Eastern Bloc countries and the rest of the world. UNIMA, as a state-respected organization working under the auspice of the UNESCO, gained considerable advantage from the respect of the power structures. And so our colleagues from the rest of the world came to our countries as to a reserve. In fact, the UNIMA guests were the guests of the Ministry of Culture, and UNIMA was registered with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. After the transition to democracy, the world opened up, people could travel, censorship was lifted, and independent puppet theatres were established in addition to the existing state-subsidized institutions that had all available equipment. UNIMA was again remained the concern of a few individuals. In the aftermath of social changes, the theatre network, including puppet theatres, has been preserved and puppet theatres continue to be accepted and there are theatre schools. However, UNIMA hasn't achieved widespread popularity, although many of its members have tried to do so. UNIMA can function as a professional organization, but the contemporary generations of professional puppeteers generally integrate with theatre. Aesthetic changes that characterize contemporary puppet theatre, which is often no longer puppetry, a puppet theatre, have contributed to this change. In some theoretical studies, we even find the concept of an invisible puppet. But it is another chapter. On the other hand, the penetration of puppetry, puppets or puppet practices into other forms of performing arts is noticeable, and our territory is not an exception. Today, puppeteers strongly influence contemporary theatre. Graduates in puppetry has a strong influence in different theatre. Also, they work for national theatres in more countries as directors, as puppeteers who introduce puppetry into their productions. Theatre makers often use puppetry techniques. Another fact concerning the weakening of the UNIMA position in our countries is the existence or non-existence of amateur puppetry, which UNIMA needs more than professional puppeteers. Amateur puppetry in Slovakia has almost completely disappeared, and in the international frame, a UNIMA Commission for Amateur Puppeteers ceased to exist. I personally see UNIMA as an important instrument in preserving puppet theatre in all its contemporary forms. This professional organization of puppetry is extremely important, otherwise it would completely merge with other creative environments. UNIMA shouldn't become a museum organization like historical puppets. The way we maintain and deal with our puppetry identity is not only the question of discussion, but it is also a task for each of us. I personally thank UNIMA a lot. UNIMA means for me personally a lot, maybe the most. When I finished studies and entered to UNIMA community, I asked my professor Nina Malikova, Mrs. Malikova, what's UNIMA for? What can I get from UNIMA? And she told me, she replied, you know, so don't await anything, but if you work for UNIMA, you will get the most. Thank you.
Thank you, Ida, for your interesting questions and ideas. And our last guest in our third block is from the Czech Republic, Kristýna Tojblová. She is scenographer, stage designer, and she is representative for the theater faculty of the Academy of Performing Arts in Prague, Department of Alternative and Puppet Theater.
Hello, I'm here to introduce you our studies at the Theatre Faculty, DAMU, Department of Alternative and Puppet Theatre. So I prepared a lot of photographies, so I hope we will reach it in some normal time. And I would like to start with that what we are doing at the theatre at the Department of Alternative and Puppet Theatre. So we put emphasis on individual dispositions, authorial thinking, and the uniqueness of theatrical communication. The student is led to discover her or his own style. The key method is a permanent process, laying and learning to remain present. So with these sentences I wanted to start because I will show you photographs which are done mainly at our festival called Process, which takes place at the end of each semester, and the students are showing what they did or prepared during the semester. So I will start with the bachelor studies, where are the programs of directing and dramaturgy, acting and stage design. We put a lot of effort to tell the students to work in teams. So as pedagogues we are building also teams. Each course are opening leaders of the programs, so each course has 3 leaders, and they are also working as a team. So I start with the photos because the students of the stage design, they work in workshops, and they are working on marionettes. They choose usually some personalities, what they are interested in, and they prepare marionettes, and then at the Process Festival they show a small show. It's mostly kind of funny piece shown on the opening of our exhibition of the stage design. So this is one of them. And what I didn't tell you is that these photographs are like from the last 3 years. So here you can see the works of the students which are studying now in this time. So these are the marionettes. And when the students are coming to study the bachelor studies, they spend the winter semester together, like the students from all of the programs. They have together workshops with pedagogues which are like from the faculty or like external pedagogues. So they learn everything together. So it's the good start to build up teams in which they go on. So this is, for example, a result of one task they got. It's also the same thing. And in the third semester, I think they get from the pedagogues a task to choose or to work with some fairy tales. So it's the first time they how to say they create a fairy tale. So these are the examples. This is the, I hope it's good translated, long, white and clear-sided. I don't know, it's a typical Czech fairy tale. So you can see how the students are trying to work with this team. This is already something else. So so it also depends on the pedagogical team, what is the task, because some of the pedagogues lead the students more to work with let's say traditional kind of puppets. Some of them are more or are going more to the direction to experimentation with materials. So how you can see the results are very like wide. So this was, for example, the inspiration of the Red Hat. It's called Over the Forest. And here you cannot see any puppets, but it's more done over object, situation, which comes out from moving or working with the object. This is the it's I forgot, it's like the name Hans and Gretel, Hansel and Gretel. Here you can see, for example, the work like the student went. She worked with light mostly. There are also not so many puppets, but all the personages are built up from with light. Here it's the same fairy tale, and they worked more with objects. They were moving the, I don't know if I can call it like puppets, but this piece of wood are representing the Hansel and Gretel, and they are moved by magnet from under the table. So this is the same fairy tale. This maybe you saw yesterday, someone of you. It's called The Smallest of the Sami. So here you can see also the work with very small puppets, and the students worked also with the lens to see the details, because they used also very small puppets. I don't know, I will show the puppet here. This is the puppet. so it's really very, very small. So as the audience, you can see what is going on through the lens, and the objects become a landscape. So it's kind of changing measures of the measures. Yes, here's the photograph with the lens. So this is another possibility how to work with this task. Here the students used a lot of old electro waste materials. They built up puppets of this material and also masks. So this fairy tale is based on a fairy tale from Russian area, Beautiful Vasilisa. This you can see was built up on the material of the egg boxes. And what I wanted to say also, that the students are not working on the puppet shows only because they are asked to do that, but here is, for example, the example when they start during the bachelor studies to build up their own teams. They found from the also across the courses colleagues, and they start to prepare their own projects. This is called RAW, and it's about dying. So this is a very hard thing to say. So this was very successful. Here you can see one man show. It's a show only for one person in the audience. It's how also you can see micro. It's really micro theater. So here you can see how it looks, and here you can see what you can see as when you watch into the small window. This is called Views. I prepared so many photographs because I wanted you to see a really wide field of possibilities what the students can do. This is working like with material, combining with some projection. Here you can see one piece where they used wooden masks and also a puppet. And this was also not a school task. This is also like the team is built up from students across the courses. Also, one of them is from another department. So here is working also the cross-department cooperation. So this is again a little bit different aesthetics based on using like trash materials, or in Czech Republic this is called like domácí umění. I don't know how to translate it exactly to English, but it's like it was like made from things you find at home. For example, from the tops of the bottles. Yeah, So these are girls, these are students from Russia, so this is built up also on some themes, what they know. It's called Čeburáška. This was a very famous animated film in 60s, and all in the post-Soviet republics, they know this film. So in this Čeburáška is very known known personage. So they the theme is coming out from it, and it is also about their memories, where they live, and because these both girls are from Minsk, from Belarus. So here you can see a beautiful house shoes from Battles. This is how I was talking about the cross-department cooperation. This is a cooperation with HAMU, with the non-verbal department. And there's also a cooperation with the Department of Choreography. So during the process there are shown also dance performances where our students are cooperating too. Yes, during the bachelor studies we have also a lot of cooperations. Like we have a lot of international workshops. For example, we had in the last few years a workshop, for example, with Tim Spooner from Great Britain, with Yuri Vasiliev from Russia, with Ache Theatre from Russia, with Agnes Limbos from Belgium, also with the members of Puppet Theatre, Ashiriza from Sapporo from Japan, yeah. And we have here also very known puppeteer Norisawa, who lives in Czech Republic, so I think like a lot. And also I remember when I was studying in the 90s, there were studying a lot of Japanese students in the Czech program. They learned Czech, and a lot of them stood also living in Czech Republic. I think it was because Petr Matásek, the very known Czech stage designer, was having a lot of contacts with Japan, so he brought people to study at DAMU. So now I stepped over to the master program. In the next photographs you will see mainly the projects which took place in the school theater disc. We are making, like our department is making open calls for the students project to the school theater disc. It's usually for the third years and for the master students, and they usually also apply like with a project for the master program. It can be a project for the school disc theater, but also we are cooperating with other spaces as DRAG, which has also its open call, also with Alta Studio and other spaces. So during the bachelor studies, in fact, the students all get known also between themselves, because they meet and they can see who is doing on the festivals during the process. So they build up the teams and they then apply for the master studies together. So yeah, this is what I wanted to say. So here you can see, for example, this performance had dernière, I think a week ago, because last week ended our last process festival. I don't have any photographs here because they are not still out, so you cannot see them. But this is one of the performances which ran last half year in the school theater. So this is not here in this performance. They are not working with puppets, but they use objects and masks. This is another show called Barunka is Leaving. So here you can see also using of mask. So these are some examples of those performances. This performance, for example, is more about, it's more like an event, so it's kind of researching what theater can be. It's called Family Celebration, and it was done by a team of girls of different faculties and departments. Like there were also students from the FAMU, or the film faculty, and also different departments at theater faculty, and they made it kind of, it was a little bit on the border of a social experimenting connected with theater, because each performance was unique, because there was invited one of the families of the girls, and so each performance was unique. Here you can see another photograph of this. This is also, this is made by the same director. It was an event a year ago. We had to go to a place in Prague. It's not looking like it's in Prague, but it is in Prague. And then everyone had to bring something to eat, and then we all together prepared this feast. Yes. So this was the master program. Then we have also a master program in English. It's for foreign students. It's called Directing of Device and Object Theater. So here you can see some photos. This program is in English, so when some Erasmus students are coming to our school, they usually join the lessons of this program because it's in English. But the pedagogues are also like the pedagogues which are working in the Czech program. So how I said, all the photographs are from the festival, so you can see in the audience a lot of pedagogues and students. And then at the end we have also a doctoral study program which is called Alternative and Puppet Theater and its Theory, and there are the students of this program. I have here like some photographs of students which are, the first one is studying mostly like stage design, so she is experimenting with material and light. So it's a performance for a small audience, very intimate. And this is a project of one student of directing. This is already on the border of installation, of art installation. Yeah. So this is everything I wanted to show you, like what you can expect and whatever you can see what is happening at our school. So it's not only the puppets, but or this is the question what we mean under that, what is a puppet. But in fact, what I think is that you need to have or to know to have a lot of skills. These skills we try to give to the students, and then they can use it to tell what they want. So puppets, through puppets, it's one way to say it. So then you have also a lot of other possibilities, like I said, or like you could see. So thank you for your attention. And when you would like to know some more information, you can find them on the website of DAMU. It's also in English. And then you can take, we have here some material. It's for the, yeah, thank you. It's for the study on the master studies in English. So thank you.
So, thank you, Christina. I think Christina starts very interesting topics, two topics for me, and it is education and a big question, what is or isn't puppet theater? And I would like to start discuss, and I hope you join this discussion.
Well, 2 years ago and 4 years ago and just a few weeks ago, there was this big festival in Erlangen, including the neighboring towns, Nuremberg, Fürth and Schwabach. And they had one special guest. It's not a family, not a person, it's a group. And they were trying this in other towns too. And it's called Rimini Protocol. And the Rimini Protocol is very successful. I mean, it's widening the borders. And to me, it comes very close to the idea of the social sculpture that was introduced in the festival in Kassel, Documenta. So this is another form, and I found that puppetry, not only the object theater, theater of animated objects or objects telling their own stories, but also going into social fields, like the two examples you had, the family parties or bringing food. This is something at the border. And so it is performance, but it's at the same time modeling not only clay and wood and color and paint, but people. People in their attitudes, in their habits, and in their communication. So it's very interesting to help, to influence, and to create with this material, so far unknown in puppetry, as a material for very interesting shows. On the other hand, one group was mentioned visiting here, but I saw them also in Switzerland, and just 2 years ago, and now again, the famous experimental technical theater from Petersburg, Ache.
Yeah.
They are incredible, and they are not really puppetry, but still, they belong to this field as well now. Thank you.
Okay.
So, excuse me, I want to underline also one very important point of the UNIMA. It was the 16th Congress in Ljubljana in 1992. It was the first international recognized event in the new state Slovenia. And it was for the new state Slovenia very important thing. And I must underline that it was very brave from UNIMA deciding to go to this new state. I remember very well that it was not possible for our councillors to join in 91 the meeting in Charleville-Mézières, where the decision was fixed. And against this situation that nobody from Slovenia was there, the council decided to recognize Slovenia with accepting this Congress. And I suppose that somebody of you were there, and it was really a great success of puppetry, I think, because there were elements from the traditional puppetry. It was just a special part, and then was experiential puppet theater. So anyhow, I think that it was one of the very important moments in UNIMA, which was tied in a way also with political support of democracy. So thank you very much.
Could I respond? I feel like you've mentioned a very important aspect of UNIMA, which is just place. And today we've talked about the complications of politics and how difficult that is. But UNIMA, simply by deciding to have an event in Slovenia, or during the 50s, both in Eastern Europe and Western Europe, or what I remember, to go to Cuba, or to be in China, or next to be in Indonesia, just the choice of those places is already making a very strong statement. So without commenting on a situation in a particular place, the ability to go there is so strong.
Thank you. I would like to make a statement about Charleville, because I heard many times, and Marek Vashkel has been writing about that. Situation in Charleville has completely changed from what it was before. Charleville, of course, was and is a very important place because of Jacques Félix. Jacques Félix was the director and founder of the festival. He was president of the institute and, at the time, general secretary of UNIMA. This means that all these things came together in Charleville. After the death of Jacques, each part was ruled by somebody else and had no connection between them. I mean, friendship, yes, but festival is run in a way, in a private way. Institute is one thing and UNIMA is another thing. UNIMA is in Charleville, and we have to say that just because, or mainly because, the French cultural minister is giving money to it. No one country, and not Spain, to say it clearly, has accepted to give the money to it, for UNIMA. So the fact that UNIMA is in Charleville, it's because money is coming from the French government. And making a joke, I'm here, as a French puppeteer, from time to time when we ask for money, they say, oh, we give money for UNIMA, so maybe we would prefer UNIMA not to be in Charleville. It's a joke. This is a joke, please, not make any mistake, okay? So, the Festival of Charleville is run under a private organization getting money from different places, but it's not open to UNIMA. It's not a UNIMA festival. This is something we must understand. So, and I've been talking a lot of that with the actual director of France, saying that if there is less people, less companies coming from each country, it is not a decision from UNIMA, not a decision for festival, but decision of money. Because money for the festival has been not going down, but keeping the same from the last 10 years, means going down, of course. Prices for shows have been increasing. And so she has to cope with the idea to have companies from all over the world. And I have the feeling, and please, I hope with my English I'm not making mistake by the way I'm going to say it. The big problem is for especially Middle Europe not to invite the director of the festival to events so she can see shows and make choices. Because many countries have been used to be invited, they don't go on with the fact that private need different relationship. I don't know how it is in Slovenia and Slovakia, I mean, and in Czech Republic. But I know that in Poland they have national event, and they have never invited the director of Charleville-Mézières to the national event. Or can you expect her to ask companies to come when she has not seen them? If people from your area are really wishing to come, they have to be known by the director. And it is something for Russia. So for many years, and we, the old generation, not to be the very old generation, we were asking why we don't see any Polish, Czech not true because we had the brother Foreman, Russian company coming, and he said, well, I haven't seen them. And the other thing is the fact that the level of Charleville has been increasing a lot because people are used to see it. And then it is expensive now to go to Charleville as a public because they need money. So this is something, Charleville Festival is private. So please don't put on Charleville Festival the problem with the fact that it is not more UNIMA. It has never been UNIMA, but because of Jacques Félix, it was mixed. Now it is not mixed up, it's different.
Yeah, may I react?
I think Ida should react because she opened this question, then I can give my opinion.
Yeah. So I think that I didn't speak about Slovakia only, of course. And with inviting directors of festival and UNIMA representatives, so I have experience and I spoke to people, directors of the festivals, that they invite people, but they simply don't come. So it's not a big interest. So it's not true that we don't invite people. But I am not a spokeswoman of more countries, all Middle Central European countries, but I go to and I am in communication with people from UNIMA, with puppeteers, with festivals, and it's not only my very subjective experience, but I am not going to generalize, but I think that I was speaking about a lack of communication, and I think that this is the most important to improve the communication between us, nothing more.
Well, I would like to thank Ida for opening this question with Central and Eastern Europe, because I think it's extremely interesting, our position in the performing arts world or culture world, or also politically. But we should distinguish, because there is a topic which is relation of Central Europe, Central and Eastern Europe with Western Europe. Another matter is, for example, presence of Czech theaters in France. And another matter is the presence of Czech puppet theater in France. I think the Czech Republic, if it is represented in France in the festivals or on the scenes through some performing arts discipline, then it's puppet theater. No text-based theater is touring in France, and maybe there are some examples from dance. But I think what is more interesting is really this feeling, which is stronger and stronger in Central and Eastern Europe. I can say this because we have many cooperations with our neighboring countries in frame of the Visegrad cooperation, which is the as you know, the 4 Central European countries. It's the political group, but it has also a cultural tool for cultural cooperation, which is the Visegrad Fund. So it's the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland, and Hungary. And we are quite aware of the fact that we were in the core of the interest in the 90s after the 1989 political and social changes. But it's a long time ago, and nowadays I think that with all the sharpening situation in the European Union and in Europe generally, this topic comes back again because there is still kind of border between West and East. I don't want to name it Iron Curtain, of course, it's not that dramatic, but still there are many differences which really can have some political impact on the political situation in Europe. And I think that this topic should be opened also on the platform of UNIMA, because I think it's extremely important that we re-establish this connection again, that there is more interest in our countries for what is done in UNIMA, but also that there should be some open position from UNIMA and interest for our territory.
I just wanted to say that I believe that the problem with the festivals is not only a matter of communication. I think compared to like the past years, now we have so many new shows. In France, I don't have my knowledge. I don't know much about what's going on in other countries, but in France, there's so many shows that even for us, the French companies, to be able to present our shows in France, we have difficulties. So it's not only the communication. I think that from one point of view, we should be very happy that the puppet world has become so much active, that we have so many shows. But from the other point of view, I think we need to find new solutions, because the offer is so much more than the demand. And you don't really get to present, even like when you say France, I'm just giving an example, but France is close to Eastern countries. I really don't think it's East and West. I think that we have so many shows and so many productions, and the market, the theatre market, cannot actually absorb all of that. Thank you.
Yes, I'm here. Just to follow about Charleville, if you've ever run a puppet festival, you know how incredibly difficult it is to choose the companies. There are, as you were saying, so many to choose from, even just in France. And there are politics involved too. I remember in 1984 you had to... Is that better? Yeah. Sorry. I think it was 1984. Dealing with the Soviet Union center of UNIMA, they wanted me to have a particular company with a particular show. And I didn't want it. I wanted the Leningrad company, which I knew was excellent. But for a person running a puppet festival, they are treading in a very, very difficult area. And they have to take account, I'm afraid, a little bit of politics, as well as the criteria of excellence and what will attract the public. That's really all I wanted to say.
May I just add this from my own experience? Organizers are tempted to accept companies which come with a very low budget because some government is funding it. So the choice is not made by the festival committee or director, but very often made by the price that is offered by a government really promoting some national company. That happens over and over again. And that makes it very difficult for a festival organizer to say, no, I don't want this company, even if your government is paying for it.
So I think time is off. Thank you very much for your attention and for a very nice and interesting discussion. And Martina would like to say you something? No?
So the conference is over. I would like to thank to all the 3 moderators, keynote speakers, and speakers in the panel. It was really a delight to cooperate with you. You were very inspirative and disciplined as well, because we are almost on time finishing. And well, I hope that we will continue our discussions this afternoon, tonight, tomorrow, or in Charlottesville during the celebrations in September. And I would like to conclude only with some instructions about this afternoon. So as I said, the exhibition opening is at 6, so you have now 2 hours free time. If you wish, my colleague Alena, she's standing there, waving, can accompany you to the Old Town Square. It's a short, maybe 10 minutes walk over the Charles Bridge, so you can see a bit of the city center, and you can go slowly to the Czech Centers Gallery. For those who are going to the hotel, we have still 5 free seats in a car, which is now heading to the hotel. And then we have for the way to the Czech Centers 3 seats in the car. So for those who wish to go to the hotel, please approach Barbara, who is organizing the car. So we will meet at 6 in the Gallery of Czech Centers, and we will continue the program. So enjoy your free time. Thank you.